Am I going to have enough revenue to pay back my investors, or the actors that have net profit participation points? To answer those questions, it's important to understand the waterfall, not as in Niagara Falls, Sutherland, or Iguazu, but as the term applies to film finance. The waterfall represents the flow of revenues and profits from the consumer to the financial stakeholders of the film. At the top of the waterfall is the entire amount of money the film has generated, and as we move down the waterfall, we can see which entities, investors, and participants are prioritized and in what order they are to receive funds. The concept could be applied to any business, but it's extremely helpful with movies, since they require a number of investors, distributors, and stakeholders. Each waterfall could be set up differently based on the contracts you've negotiated, but to illustrate the idea, I'm going to pretend that the first play Fatelink produced, Fate of the Monarchs, has been turned into a feature film. Let's run an example waterfall. Let's say Fate of the Monarchs cost $250,000 to make, all in. To finance the movie, we found 5 investors who each put up $50,000 in private equity. Our deal with them is that they will get their original investment plus a 20% return. Once they've been paid their original investment plus 20% return, each of the 5 investors will get 10% of the net profits. Fatelink, the production company, will get 30% of the net profits. 3 stars of the film will each receive 5% of the net profits, and the writer-director will also get 5% of the net profits. Okay, so those were the deals we made before stepping on a set. Then we went out, made the movie, and now it's time to find distribution and sign some more deals. We decide to hire 2 sales agents on commission, one to represent the film in the US, Canada, and one to represent the film internationally. Each sales agent charges us a 10% commission on funds received by the production company. Our domestic sales agent charges us for expenses on her territories, up to $10,000, but our international sales agent does not charge for expenses. In the end, as fate would have it, we premiere at a festival and get an offer for worldwide distribution from Amazing Distribution Company. So despite having 2 different agents, we end up with one deal. I'm doing this mainly to make our example waterfall a little bit easier, even if it's not quite realistic. Our deal with Amazing Distribution Company is that they're going to retain 25% of sales and we get 75% of sales, but they're also going to charge us for their marketing expenses, up to $25,000. They're not going to give us a minimum guarantee. They're good negotiators. But good news, over the 7 years that they distribute the film, Amazing Distribution Company earns $500,000 for it. So the film doubles its money, right? Not quite. Let's see exactly what happens with that $500,000 as we go through our example waterfall. Brief aside, where did that $500,000 come from? We're assuming that Amazing Distribution Company went out and licensed the film to a few cable companies in different parts of the world, then licensed the film to several streaming platforms. They put the film on retail sites and sold DVDs and Blu-ray versions of Fate of the Monarchs, and people bought the film as a digital download on a number of platforms that Amazing Distribution Company found, then negotiated and transferred the relevant files to those platforms. Whatever portion those platforms took as a percentage, Amazing Distribution Company never saw that money, and that doesn't go into the $500,000 in revenue that I'm talking about. Now, where does that money go? In reality, this money would have been distributed over those 7 years, but that would make our example extremely complicated. So for the sake of efficiency, I'm going to assume one payment of $500,000. It's also relevant to know that $400,000 of the sales came from the US, Canada, while $100,000 of the sales came from international territories. Okay, so where does the money go first? Of this $500,000, our distributor is slated to earn 25%, or $125,000, leaving the remaining 75%, or $375,000, for us. However, the distributor used the entire $25,000 of expenses for sales and marketing, so they will deduct that amount from the $375,000 owed to us, leaving us with $350,000. Now, it's time to pay our sales agents. As it happens, both our domestic and international agents negotiated a 10% commission. But remember, our domestic sales agent charged us $10,000 in expenses. As it turns out, 80% of our sales were domestic and 20% of our sales were international. That means that $280,000 of our funds came from domestic sales and $70,000 came from international sales. So we owe our international sales agent $7,000 and our domestic sales agent $38,000. Remember those expenses she negotiated? Okay, so that leaves us with $305,000. Of that amount, we owe our 5 original investors their $50,000 back. So $50,000 times 5 is $250,000. So the good news is we've managed to pay back our investors. Now, on top of their original investment, each investor is owed a 20% return, which would be $10,000 each. So let's go ahead and pay that $10,000 multiplied by 5 investors. Now, each investor has gotten their money back plus a 20% return, which is fairly standard. After we pay that, we have only $5,000 left. Of that $5,000, the investors each get 10% of net profits, FateLink gets 30%, and our 3 movie stars get 5%. Oh, and the writer-director also gets 5%. So, our investors would each get an additional $500, FateLink would get $1,500, and each of the movie stars and the director would get $250. For this risky adventure of making a movie, each investor has walked away with $60,500, FateLink has scored $1,500, and the stars and director made $250 in net profits, and of course, the stars and director were also paid a salary up front that came from the original $250,000 budget. You can imagine one of the movie stars calling their agents and saying, I know this movie only cost $250,000 to make and it made double that, and yet I'm only getting $250. Am I getting screwed here? According to the Waterfall, the way this particular film was set up, the answer is no. The paycheck given to the movie star is 100% correct, but that's why it's important to pay attention during your negotiations and understand what each contractual provision might mean, not only for yourself, but for the other profit participators at the bottom of the waterfall. As complicated as this example has been, real-life examples are likely to be even more complicated, because there are likely to be ongoing expenses for the production company and possibly residual payments to actors as well, depending on the contract that's been signed with talent. But I didn't want to overwhelm you, just give you an overview of the concept. I hope this video has helped you better understand the idea of the waterfall as it applies to film finance. If you enjoy the content, please like the video and subscribe to our FateLink channel.